What if I told you that sometimes the cruelest words can become the greatest gift of your life? What if the moment that breaks your heart completely is actually the moment that sets you free? Today's story will show you how one devastating dinner conversation transformed a 70-year-old woman's entire existence and proved that it's never too late to reclaim your worth. But before we dive into this life-changing tale, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, because this story will challenge everything you believe about family loyalty, sacrifice, and the courage to start over. The silent sacrifice for 6 long months. Eleanor had been living a lie wrapped in motherly love. Every month, like clockwork, $800 disappeared from her modest savings account. Money earned through decades of bent fingers over a sewing machine, stitching dreams for other people's special occasions, while her own remained folded away like unused fabric. Her son Marcus had appeared at her doorstep half a year ago, tears streaming down his face, explaining how life had knocked him to his knees. No job, no prospects, no way to pay rent for the apartment he shared with his wife, Isabella. "Mom, it's just temporary," he had pleaded with that broken voice that had always melted her maternal defenses. "Just until I get back on my feet. Isabella doesn't need to know. I don't want her feeling ashamed about depending on you." How foolish Eleanor had been to believe his words were about protecting his wife's pride rather than preserving his own fragile ego as a provider. While Eleanor counted every penny, skipping meals and postponing doctor visits, Marcus and Isabella lived as if nothing had changed. Expensive dinners, designer purchases, weekend getaways, all funded by money they believed came from Marcus's non-existent income. The perfect storm, the evening that would change everything, started with such hope. Eleanor had spent the entire day preparing Marcus's childhood favorites: herb-crusted salmon, roasted vegetables with garlic, and that chocolate mousse cake he had devoured as a boy, always declaring her the world's greatest chef. Her antique china gleamed under the dining room chandelier, each piece carefully selected to create the perfect atmosphere for what she hoped would be a beautiful family evening. She had even splurged on fresh orchids for the centerpiece, their delicate petals reflecting the soft candlelight. Isabella arrived looking like she'd stepped from a magazine cover. Emerald silk dress that probably cost more than Eleanor's monthly grocery budget. Jewelry that caught the light with every gesture. But behind her practiced smile, Eleanor sensed something predatory, like a cat sizing up a mouse. Marcus seemed nervous from the moment they walked in, constantly checking his phone, avoiding eye contact, fidgeting with his wedding ring. The air felt charged with unspoken tension. The mask-slips-away dinner conversation felt like walking on broken glass. Isabella criticized everything with surgical precision: the room temperature, Eleanor's decorating choices, even the scent of the vanilla candles burning on the mantel. "Eleanor, don't you think it's time to modernize this place?" Isabella commented with that razor-sharp tone disguised as concern. "My mother's home has such contemporary elegance. These old-fashioned pieces just feel so dated." Eleanor smiled through gritted teeth, trying to maintain peace. But inside, resentment was building like water behind a dam. This house held 30 years of memories, every corner telling stories of laughter, tears, and unconditional love. When dessert time arrived, Eleanor felt a flicker of optimism. Surely now they could share a sweet moment together. She had crafted the chocolate mousse with such care, remembering how Marcus once told her she could open her own bakery. But instead of gratitude, she received words that sliced through her soul like shards of ice. "You're nothing compared to my mother." Time stopped. Eleanor froze with the serving spoon suspended mid-air, the words echoing in her mind like a death sentence. Isabella's smile turned cruel, as if she had been savoring this moment all evening, waiting for the perfect opportunity to deliver maximum damage. Marcus stared at his plate, his silence more damaging than any words could have been. "The truth erupts." "Excuse me," Eleanor whispered, though every syllable had burned itself into her memory. Isabella leaned back with false elegance, as if she owned the house where she was merely a guest. "You heard me perfectly, Eleanor. My mother built an empire from nothing. She owns businesses, travels the world, commands respect. You just cook and clean like women did 50 years ago." Each word was a dagger aimed at Eleanor's heart. She thought of decades spent working before dawn and after midnight, sewing wedding gowns for brides while never having a proper wedding of her own, selling her jewelry to pay for Marcus's education, working through sickness to ensure he never went without. "Isabella, Please, Marcus mumbled weakly, but his protest carried no real conviction. Those two pathetic words confirmed that he agreed with his wife's assessment. No, Marcus, let me finish. Isabella continued, her voice dripping with venom. Your mother needs to understand reality. My mother would never have trapped her children in this mediocrity. She would have helped us achieve something greater instead of keeping us dependent on her charity. That word, charity, detonated like a bomb in Eleanor's chest. The revelation that shook everything something. Inside, Eleanor snapped with an almost audible crack. Not just at the cruelty of Isabella's words, but at the staggering ingratitude from someone who had been unknowingly living off her generosity. Eleanor rose slowly, feeling an adrenaline surge she hadn't experienced in decades. You're absolutely right, Isabella, she said with deadly calm. If your mother is truly superior to me, if she's such an exemplary woman, then she should definitely take over the responsibilities that someone of her caliber naturally handles. Isabella's smug expression remained intact, believing she had won some twisted victory. Exactly, Eleanor. I'm relieved you finally recognize your limitations. Oh, I recognize them perfectly, Eleanor replied, her voice gaining strength with each word. My limitations no longer include paying the $800 monthly rent for your apartment on Maple Street. Unit 7B. The silence that followed was so profound, Eleanor could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. Marcus shot up so violently he knocked over his wine glass, red liquid spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. What rent? He shouted, his eyes wide with shock and terror. What are you talking about, Mom? Isabella's triumphant smile evaporated completely, replaced by a look of pure panic. The house of cards collapses. The rent I've been faithfully paying since March, Eleanor continued, savoring every second of their bewilderment. $800 that comes directly from my checking account on the 15th of every month, plus the additional fees for electronic transfer. $900 total that I've sacrificed so you could live comfortably while treating me like your inferior. Marcus collapsed back into his chair as if his legs had turned to water. But you told me you had worked out a payment plan with the landlord, he stammered, his voice cracking. You said he was giving us time. Isabella stared at him with a fury that could have melted steel. You told me you were handling the rent payments yourself. I lied, Eleanor admitted without a trace of shame. I lied because I thought I was helping my son during a temporary crisis. I believed you would eventually appreciate my sacrifice. But now I see that to both of you, I'm just a pathetic old woman who deserves contempt rather than respect. The deeper truth emerges. Isabella tried to regain her composure, but her voice had lost all its arrogant confidence. Eleanor, I had no idea you were paying. Marcus never told me. Stop, Eleanor commanded, raising her hand. I'm not interested in your excuses. If your mother is as remarkable as you claim, I'm certain she'll be delighted to handle this responsibility. After all, such a successful, independent woman wouldn't have any difficulty managing her daughter's living expenses, would she? The sarcasm in Eleanor's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. Marcus's hands were trembling as he looked between the two women. Mom, why didn't you tell me the truth from the beginning? Eleanor felt tears building, but they were tears of rage rather than sorrow. I lied because you're my son, Marcus. Because when you came to me sobbing, telling me you had lost everything and couldn't even afford groceries, I couldn't bear to watch the child I raised suffer. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. I lied because I thought it was temporary. I never imagined that while I was skipping my arthritis medication to save money, while I was eating rice and beans for dinner to afford your rent, you two were planning how to humiliate me in my own home. The final confrontation, the atmosphere in the dining room was thick enough to suffocate. Isabella glanced frantically between Marcus and Eleanor, her mind clearly racing to calculate the implications of this revelation. You know what hurts most, Marcus? Eleanor continued, feeling the tears finally spilling down her cheeks. It's not the financial sacrifice. It's not even the deception. It's that every time you visited these past 6 months, I saw disdain in your eyes. Isabella criticized my home, my cooking, my appearance, all while my money was literally keeping a roof over her ungrateful head. And you just sat there, letting it happen. Marcus tried to approach her, but Eleanor stepped back. Mom, please let me explain. What is there to explain? Eleanor cut him off. Your wife believes I'm worthless compared to her mother. Well, Let's see how valuable her mother really is when she's responsible for your welfare instead of me. Isabella finally found her voice again, though it shook with desperation. Eleanor, my words were spoken in anger. I was frustrated about other things. Eleanor laughed bitterly. You were frustrated about having to eat dinner at the home of the woman paying your bills. Frustrated because you had to pretend civility toward someone you consider beneath you. The breaking point, the tension was suffocating when Marcus suddenly exploded with information that changed everything. Mom, I lost my job again 2 weeks ago. I was planning to tell you after dinner. Eleanor felt the room spinning. You lost your job 2 weeks ago? And you said nothing while allowing your wife to attack me, knowing you're completely dependent on my support. Isabella whirled on Marcus with volcanic fury. What do you mean you lost your job 2 weeks ago? I just spent $500 on new clothes yesterday. We booked that weekend trip to the mountains. Marcus couldn't meet either woman's eyes. I was trying to figure out how to tell you both. Tell us. Isabella shrieked. You let me spend money like everything was normal while we're actually broke? Eleanor watched this meltdown with a mixture of satisfaction and heartbreak. For months, she had carried the burden of supporting this dysfunctional couple, and now they were finally confronting their reality, the moment of truth. You want to know what's truly pathetic about all this? Eleanor said with eerie calm. Even now, after discovering your lies and enduring your insults, my first instinct is still to ask if you need help. That's what real love does, Marcus. That's what genuine family loyalty looks like. Marcus looked at her with the expression of a lost child. Mom, I know I've made terrible mistakes, but we have nowhere else to go. That's not my problem anymore, Eleanor replied with steel in her voice. For 70 years I've been taking care of everyone else. I cared for my parents until they died. I nursed your father through his final illness. I've sacrificed for you since the day you were born. Do you know when someone last took care of me? When did anyone ever worry about my well-being? The silence was deafening as the truth hung in the air like smoke from a fire. The unexpected revelation, never. Marcus admitted in a voice barely above a whisper. I never considered taking care of you. I always assumed you'd be there, that you'd always be strong enough to handle everything. Isabella had lost patience with this emotional reckoning. Enough drama, Eleanor. You're his mother. It's your responsibility to help your son. You can't just decide to stop being a parent. Those words ignited something explosive inside Eleanor. She walked toward Isabella until they were inches apart, her voice low and menacing. Never tell me how to be a mother. I've been a mother for 35 years. I've sacrificed my youth, my dreams, my health, everything for my son. What have you sacrificed besides your conscience? The life-changing phone call. Just then, Eleanor's phone rang with perfect timing. The caller ID showed a name that made her heart skip, William Chen. William had been her college boyfriend, the brilliant pre-med student she had planned to marry before choosing security over passion. He had moved to California for his residency 40 years ago, and they had lost touch completely. Excuse me, Eleanor said, stepping into the kitchen to answer. Eleanor? The voice was older but unmistakably familiar. Is this really you? William? How did you find me? I've been looking for you for months through social media. Eleanor, I lost my wife last year, and it made me realize how many regrets I've been carrying. You were always the one who got away. Marcus and Isabella had followed her to the kitchen, overhearing every word with growing alarm. William, it's been 40 years. I know, but I never stopped thinking about you. I'm a retired cardiologist now. I have a house in Napa Valley, grown children who live their own lives. And for the first time since medical school, I have time to pursue happiness instead of just success. Eleanor felt a warmth spreading through her chest that she hadn't experienced in decades. The proposition that changed everything, Eleanor. I know this sounds crazy, but I want to see you again. I want to take you to all the places we dreamed about visiting when we were 20. I want to cook dinner for you and hear about your life. I want to find out if what we had was real or just youthful fantasy. Marcus and Isabella stood frozen, watching Eleanor's face transform with an expression they had never seen before. Pure joy. William, I don't know what to say. Say yes to a visit. Come to California for a few weeks. Let me show you the Pacific Coast. Introduce you to my kids. Wine and dine you the way you deserve. If nothing else, you'll have a wonderful vacation. Eleanor looked at Marcus and Isabella, both staring at her with expressions of shock and fear. For the first time in her life, she was going to make a decision based entirely on her own happiness. "Yes," she said firmly. "Yes, I'll come." The power shift after hanging up, Eleanor faced her son and daughter-in-law with newfound confidence. "That was Dr. William Chen, my former fiancé. He's invited me to spend a month at his estate in California." Marcus went pale. "Mom, you can't go off with some man you haven't seen in 40 years. He could be anyone. He could be exactly what you've accused me of not being. Someone successful, accomplished, worthy of respect." Eleanor's voice carried a power that silenced both of them. Isabella had collapsed into a kitchen chair, her face buried in her hands. "This is a nightmare. First Marcus loses his job, now you're abandoning us for some stranger. William isn't a stranger to me. He knew me when I had dreams beyond just being someone's mother or caretaker. He saw value in me that neither of you has ever acknowledged." The final decision. Over the following weeks, Eleanor made arrangements that would have been unthinkable just a month earlier. She purchased a plane ticket to San Francisco, bought new clothes for the first time in years, and began to see herself through William's eyes rather than through her family's neglect. Marcus tried desperately to change her mind, but his pleas fell on deaf ears. Eleanor had tasted freedom, and there was no going back. "Mom, what if this William guy isn't what he seems? What if you get hurt? Marcus, what if he's exactly what I've been missing all these years? What if I finally get to be happy instead of just useful?" The night before her departure, Marcus came to her house one last time. He looked gaunt and defeated, but there was something different in his eyes, the beginning of understanding. "I've been going to therapy," he said quietly. "I'm starting to see how I've been using you my entire adult life. I'm glad to hear that. The therapist helped me understand that I never learned to be responsible because you were always there to rescue me. I know it's too late to fix our relationship, but I want you to know that I'm going to try to become the kind of son you deserved." The new beginning, Eleanor's month in California, exceeded every expectation. William treated her like the queen she had forgotten she was. He cooked elaborate dinners, took her wine tasting, introduced her to his successful children who welcomed her with open arms. "Dad hasn't smiled like this since before Mom got sick," his daughter told her. "Thank you for bringing joy back into his life." Most importantly, William saw Eleanor as a complete person with her own dreams and aspirations, not just as someone's mother or caretaker. When the month ended, William made the proposal that would define the rest of Eleanor's life. "Don't go back. Stay here with me. Let's build something beautiful together." The choice that defined everything. Eleanor's decision to stay in California and marry William after a whirlwind courtship shocked everyone who knew her. But for the first time in her life, she was choosing happiness over duty, love over obligation. Marcus, meanwhile, was learning to stand on his own feet. The therapy had helped him recognize his patterns of dependency, and losing Eleanor's financial support forced him to develop genuine responsibility. Isabella, predictably, left him for a man who could maintain her lifestyle. But Marcus found himself relieved rather than devastated. He finally understood the difference between love and emotional parasitism. The lesson that changes everything. Eleanor writes her story from William's deck overlooking the Napa Valley. She reflects on the transformation that began with Isabella's cruel words. Those devastating insults had been the wake-up call she needed to recognize her own worth. "Sometimes," she writes, "the worst thing someone can say to you becomes the best thing that ever happened to you. Sometimes you have to lose everything you thought mattered to discover what actually does." Marcus visits twice a year now, and their relationship is healthier than it's ever been. He's built a successful career, found genuine love with a woman who challenges him to be better, and most importantly, learned to appreciate his mother as a person rather than just a resource. "The irony," Marcus told her during his last visit, "is that by letting you go, I finally got to know who you really are. Not just my mom, but Eleanor, the remarkable woman who deserved so much more than what we gave her." Eleanor's story proves that it's never too late to reclaim your worth, chase your dreams, or demand the respect you deserve. Sometimes the cruelest words become the greatest gifts, and sometimes losing everything leads to finding yourself. The question is, do you have the courage to recognize your own worth, even when everyone around you has forgotten it? Because believe me, you deserve so much more than you've been settling for. What would you do if someone showed you that you've been accepting far less than you deserve? Would you have the courage to start over at any age? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that will inspire you to never settle for less than your worth. Your transformation might be just one difficult conversation away.